The knock on the door came just as Dalton Hawthorne was sitting down to a cold supper of bread, cheese, and the last of yesterday's stew. He paused with his spoon halfway to his mouth, listening. Out here on the frontier, unexpected visitors after sunset usually meant trouble, bandits, wolves, or worse. He set down his spoon and moved quietly to the wall where his hunting bow hung, stringing it with practiced ease before approaching the heavy oak door. "Who's there?" he called out, keeping his voice steady. "I seek Dalton Hawthorne, the human who lives alone," came a reply in a deep, accented voice that was unmistakably female but carried a roughness he had only heard once before in his life. An orc. Dalton's heart hammered against his ribs. He had fought orcs during his time as a border guard 5 years ago, back when he was barely 20. The war had ended with an uneasy truce, but old hatreds died hard on both sides. What was an orc doing at his homestead? His farm sat a good 10 miles from the nearest settlement, tucked against the edge of the thornwood forest where he had built a life of solitude after leaving military service. "What do you want?" he asked, not yet opening the door. "To speak with you. I am unarmed and I come with my daughter." "We mean no harm." The mention of a daughter gave him pause. Dalton had heard stories of orc war parties using deception, but never one involving a child. Curiosity warred with caution. Finally, he unbarred the door and opened it just wide enough to see out, his bow held ready but not drawn. On his doorstep stood an orc woman of middle years, perhaps in her 40s by human reckoning, though it was difficult to tell with orcs. She stood nearly as tall as him, powerfully built with broad shoulders and arms that showed the defined muscle of someone who had spent a lifetime doing hard labor. Her skin was a deep forest green, weathered by sun and wind. 2 small tusks curved upward from her lower jaw, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid threaded with gray. She wore simple traveling clothes of leather and rough spun cloth, dusty from the road, but it was the figure behind her that made Dalton's breath catch. A young orc woman stood half hidden in her mother's shadow, and she was unlike any orc he had ever seen. She was younger, probably around his own age of 25, and while she had the characteristic green skin and small tusks of her kind, there was a delicate quality to her features that seemed at odds with the orcish warriors he remembered. She was tall and strong-looking, yes, but there was something graceful in the way she held herself. Her eyes, large and dark as river stones, met his for just a moment before darting away. She wore a dress of faded blue cloth that had been mended many times, and she clutched a small traveling pack to her chest like a shield. "My name is Grenda Ironback," the older orc said, her voice formal and stiff as if she were reciting words she had rehearsed. "This is my daughter, Nara. I've come to make you an offer." "An offer?" Dalton lowered his bow slightly but did not set it aside. "Yes, you will marry my daughter." The words hit him like a physical blow. For several long seconds, Dalton could only stare at the orc woman, certain he had misheard. "I will what?" "You will marry my daughter," Grenda repeated with the same formal cadence. "In exchange, I will give you 20 silver coins, 2 goats, and my promise that no harm will come to you or your farm from any orc clan in these territories." Dalton's mind reeled. This was insane. "I do not understand." Why would I? This makes no sense." Behind her mother, Nara seemed to shrink even further, her eyes fixed firmly on the ground. Even in the fading light, Dalton could see a flush of darker green spreading across her cheeks. Grenda's jaw tightened. "May we come inside?" "This is not a conversation for your doorstep." Every instinct Dalton had developed during his years as a soldier screamed at him to refuse, to shut the door and bar it. But something in the older orc's eyes stopped him. It was not threat or aggression he saw there. It was desperation. Against his better judgment, he stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in, but I'm keeping my bow close." "That is your right," Grenda said with a nod that seemed almost respectful. She entered first, her eyes quickly scanning the single-room cabin with the practiced assessment of a veteran. Nara followed, moving with small, hesitant steps. She kept her eyes down and positioned herself near the door as if ready to flee. Dalton closed the door and gestured to the rough wooden table where his abandoned supper still waited. "Sit. I'll get more cups." He moved to his small kitchen area, using the familiar actions of hospitality to give himself time to think. He poured water from his pitcher into 3 clay cups and brought them to the table. Grenda had taken a seat with her back straight and her hands flat on the table. Nara remained standing by the door. "Your daughter should sit as well," Dalton said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. Nara's eyes flicked to her mother, who gave a sharp nod. The younger orc moved to the table and sat, but she perched on the very edge of the bench as if she might need to spring up at any moment. This close, Dalton could see more details. Her hands were rough with calluses but smaller than her mother's. There was a fading bruise on her forearm. She kept her eyes fixed on the cup of water in front of her. Dalton sat down across from them and set his bow within reach. "Now, explain this to me. Why in all the kingdoms and territories would you want me to marry your daughter?" Grenda took a long drink of water, then set the cup down with deliberate care. When she spoke, her voice had lost some of its formal edge. "Nara was to marry a warrior of our clan, Throck Bonecrusher. He is strong, respected, a skilled hunter. It was arranged when she was young." "I see," Dalton said slowly. And 3 months ago, Nara refused the marriage." Dalton's eyebrows rose. He knew enough about orc culture to understand that such a refusal would be catastrophic. "Why?" For the first time, Grenda's composure cracked. Her hands curled into fists on the table. "Because Throck is cruel. Because when she was 14, he found her alone gathering herbs and he struck her for not bowing to him quickly enough. Because in the years since, he has made clear what kind of husband he would be, the kind who rules by fear and fist." Dalton felt a cold anger settle in his gut. "And your clan leaders allowed this betrothal to stand. Strength is valued among our people," Grenda said bitterly. "Throck's father is chief of our war band. The marriage would have brought our family status and protection." She looked at her daughter, and the fierce love in her eyes was unmistakable. "But Nara would not have survived it. I know my daughter. She is strong, but not in the ways our people prize. She has a gentle heart. Throck would have broken her." Nara's hands trembled slightly around her cup. A single tear traced down her green cheek, but she made no sound. "So she refused," Dalton said. "What happened then?" The clan was furious. "Throck's family demanded compensation for the insult. When we could not pay, they cast us out. Nara and I have been traveling for 2 weeks, looking for somewhere safe." Grenda's voice hardened. "And then I remembered you." Dalton frowned. "You remembered me. We have never met." "No, but I know of you. 5 years ago, during the border conflicts, you were part of a human guard unit that captured several orc prisoners. Do you remember?" A chill ran through Dalton. "I remember. One of those prisoners was my cousin Durnok. He was young, barely into his warrior years. Foolish. He told me later about his capture. The other humans wanted to execute the prisoners as a warning. You argued against it. You said they were soldiers following orders, not monsters. You gave them water and treated their wounds. When they were released in the prisoner exchange, Durnok told the story to our clan. The human guard with kind eyes who showed mercy. Dalton barely remembered making that argument, though he remembered the prisoners. I was just trying to do what was right. That is why we are here," Grenda said. I have heard of no other human in these territories who might show mercy to an orc. So I ask again, Dalton Hawthorne, will you marry my daughter? The question hung in the air between them. Dalton looked at Nara, who had finally lifted her eyes to meet his. They were not the eyes of a warrior or a monster. They were the eyes of someone frightened and desperate, someone who had lost everything and was being offered to a stranger as a last resort. "This is madness," Dalton said quietly. "Even if I agreed, and I'm not saying I will, how would this work? I'm human. She's an orc. Our people have been enemies for generations. The nearest town would run us both out if they knew, probably kill us." "You live alone, far from others," Grenda said. "You could continue to do so. Nara is a hard worker. She can cook, so tend animals, work a field. She would be useful to you. I don't need a servant. I've managed fine on my own." "She would be your wife, not your servant," Grenda said sharply. "You would treat her with respect and kindness, or I will return and we will have a different kind of conversation." Despite the tension of the situation, Dalton felt a flicker of respect for the orc mother. She was trying to protect her daughter in the only way she knew how. "And what does Nara think about all this?" Dalton asked, directing the question to the younger orc for the first time. "Does she want to marry a human stranger?" Nara's eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and carried a lighter accent than her mother's. "I want to be safe. I want to live without fear." She paused, then added with heartbreaking honesty, "If you are kind, that is more than I hoped for." The simple, devastating truth of those words struck Dalton in a way he had not expected. This young woman had been so mistreated that kindness from a stranger seemed like a dream. He thought of his own lonely existence on this farm, day after day of solitary work and silent evenings. He thought of the war and the things he had seen, the hatred between their peoples that seemed so absolute and yet so senseless when you looked at someone like Nara, who just wanted to live without fear. He was not a rash man. He had built his life on careful planning and caution. But something in his chest was pulling him toward a decision that defied all logic. "I need time to think," he said finally. "This is not a choice to make lightly." Grenda nodded. "That is fair. May we stay the night? We will sleep in your barn. By morning you will give us your answer." Dalton considered refusing, then thought better of it. "You can stay in here. I'll sleep in the barn." "That is not necessary, I insist. You've traveled far. My floor is more comfortable than hay." He stood, gathering a blanket from his bed. "There's more bread and cheese if you're hungry. I'll come get you at first light." Before either orc could protest further, Dalton took his bow and slipped out into the night, closing the door firmly behind him. The cool air hit his face as he crossed the yard to his small barn where his horse, Copper, and 2 dairy cows rested. He climbed into the hayloft and spread his blanket, but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. He lay in the darkness, staring up at the wooden beams, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. An orc mother wanted him to marry her daughter, to protect her, to keep her safe. It was absurd. It was dangerous. It was impossible. And yet he could not stop thinking about Nara's eyes when she said, "If you are kind, that is more than I hoped for." What kind of life had she lived that simple kindness was beyond her expectations? Dalton had seen cruelty during the war, on both sides. He had seen humans treat orcs as less than animals, and orcs return that hatred with savage violence. But he had also seen moments of unexpected mercy, like when an orc warrior had pulled him from a burning building during a raid, saving his life for no reason Dalton could understand. The world was not as simple as his commanders had tried to make it. People were not as simple. He thought about his own life. 5 years of self-imposed isolation, working his small farm, selling crops in town but never quite belonging there. The other settlers kept their distance from him, unsettled by his refusal to hate orcs as thoroughly as they did. He had built a life that was peaceful but empty. No friends, no family, no future beyond more of the same solitary days. Would it really be so much worse to share that solitude with someone else? Someone who needed safety as much as he needed purpose. By the time dawn light began creeping through the gaps in the barn walls, Dalton had made his decision. It was probably the most foolish thing he had ever done, but it felt right in a way he could not fully explain. He climbed down from the loft, washed his face in the cold water of the horse trough, and walked back to his cabin. When he opened the door, he found Grenda already awake, standing by the window. Nara was still asleep on the floor, curled up beneath a blanket. She looked younger in sleep, vulnerable. Grenda turned at his entrance, her face tense with anticipation. Dalton took a breath. "I have conditions." The orc woman's eyes narrowed. "Speak." "First, I will not force anything on your daughter. This arrangement will be a marriage of protection and companionship, nothing more unless she chooses otherwise. I will give her time to adjust and the right to make her own choices about her life." Grenda nodded slowly. "That is acceptable. What else?" "Second, I will not take your money or your goats. If I do this, it's not because you're paying me. It's because it's the right thing to do." "That is foolish but honorable." "Third," Dalton said, his voice softening, "you should know that this will make my life harder. If anyone finds out I've married an orc, they'll likely drive me out or worse. I'm willing to take that risk, but Nara needs to understand what she's getting into. I can offer her safety and kindness, but I cannot promise her an easy life." "No life is easy," Grenda said simply. "But you offer her a chance to live without being beaten. That is enough." Dalton looked at the sleeping figure on his floor. "Then yes, I will marry your daughter." The relief that flooded Grenda's face was so profound it was almost painful to witness. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and nodded. "You are a man of honor, Dalton Hawthorne. I am in your debt." "Wake her," Dalton said. "She should hear this from me." Grenda moved to her daughter and gently shook her shoulder. Nara woke with a start, her eyes wide and frightened until she remembered where she was. She sat up, looking between her mother and Dalton. Dalton knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Nara, your mother asked me to marry you. I've decided to agree to this arrangement, but I want you to know what that means. I will not hurt you. I will treat you with respect. You will have a home here, and I will do my best to keep you safe. But this is your choice too. If you don't want this, if you'd rather try to find another way, I will help you. I won't force this on you." Nara stared at him, her dark eyes searching his face as if looking for deception. "You would truly marry me? An orc?" "I would." "Why?" It was a fair question, and Dalton tried to give her an honest answer. "Because I think everyone deserves a chance at a peaceful life, and because I'm tired of living as if the war never ended. Maybe this is a way to start something different." Nara was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "I accept. I will be your wife." The weight of those words settled over the cabin. Dalton stood and offered his hand to help her up. After a moment's hesitation, Nara took it. Her hand was warm and rough with calluses. He pulled her to her feet, and they stood facing each other. Two people from enemy races about to tie their lives together. Grenda cleared her throat. "Among our people, a marriage is sealed with an exchange of vows before witnesses and a binding of hands. We have no witnesses here, but I can perform the ceremony if you both wish." Dalton looked at Nara. "Do you want to do this now? We could wait." "Now," Nara said softly. "If we wait, I will lose my courage." So they stood together in the small cabin as the morning light grew stronger. and Grenda performed an orc marriage ceremony that was both foreign and strangely moving. She took a strip of leather cord and wound it around their clasped hands as she spoke in the orcish language, then translated for Dalton's benefit. By blood and bone, by strength and honor, by the earth that holds us and the sky that covers us, I bind you together. May you find shelter in each other. May you find strength in unity. May your days be long and your nights peaceful. She tied the cord and stepped back. It is done. You are married. Dalton and Nara stood with their hands bound, looking at each other. There was no kiss, no celebration, no joy. Just two strangers newly tied together, trying to understand what they had just done. Grenda carefully unwound the cord and handed it to Nara. Keep this. It is proof of your union. She turned to Dalton. I must leave now. Every hour I stay puts you at greater risk if I am tracked. Where will you go? Dalton asked. North, to the free territories beyond the mountains. There are orc clans there who do not answer to the war chiefs. I will find a place. She gripped her daughter's shoulders and looked into her eyes. Be strong, Nara. Remember that you are Ironback clan. We do not break. Mother, Nara's voice cracked. Hush, this is not forever. When it is safe, I will find a way to send word. Grenda pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace, then released her and stepped back. She looked at Dalton. Protect her, or I will know. I will, Dalton said, and meant it. Then Grenda was gone, slipping out the door and disappearing into the morning mist. Dalton and Nara stood in the sudden silence of the cabin, now alone together. Nara was the first to move. She looked around the cabin with new eyes, as if seeing it differently now that it was to be her home. What would you have me do? She asked quietly. Do, Dalton repeated. For work, for chores. What do you need? She had slipped into a careful, neutral tone, and Dalton realized she was trying to make herself useful to prove her value. Nara, he said gently, you don't have to prove anything today. You just left your family and married a stranger. Take time to adjust. She looked at him with confusion, as if the concept of rest was foreign. I do not need time. I need purpose. Please, let me help. Dalton could see the desperation beneath her calm exterior. She was trying to establish her place, to find solid ground. He understood that. All right. I was planning to work in the garden this morning. You could help with that if you want. Relief flickered across her face. Yes, I can do that. They worked together through the morning in Dalton's vegetable garden, which sprawled behind the cabin in neat rows. The plants were thriving in the summer heat, squash and beans and tomatoes heavy on their vines. Dalton showed Nara which weeds to pull and which plants needed staking. She worked with steady efficiency, her strong hands careful with the delicate plants. They did not talk much. The silence between them was not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. It was the silence of two people learning each other's rhythms, figuring out how to exist in the same space. At midday, Dalton called a halt to the work. We should eat something. Inside, he put together a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold chicken. Nara ate slowly, with careful manners, as if even this was some kind of test. Dalton found himself studying her when she was not looking. In the clear light of day, he could see the details he had missed the night before. The way her dark hair caught hints of red in the sunshine, the delicate point of her ears, the small white scars on her hands that spoke of years of hard work. What are you thinking? Nara asked suddenly, catching him looking. Dalton felt heat rise to his face. I'm sorry, I was just trying to understand all this. Yesterday I was alone, today I have a wife. It's strange. Strange, Nara repeated. Yes, that is a good word for it. She set down her bread. May I ask you something, of course? Are you angry that your life has been disrupted this way? The question surprised him with its directness. No, he said after considering. "I'm not angry. Confused, maybe. Uncertain, but not angry." "That is good." She picked at her bread, pulling it into small pieces. "I will try not to be a burden to you. I know this is not what you would have chosen." "It's not what either of us would have chosen," Dalton said. "But that doesn't mean it has to be bad. We can make the best of it." Nara looked at him with those dark eyes that seemed too old for her young face. "You are kind. My mother was right about you." The simple statement made Dalton's chest tighten. He changed the subject. "Tell me about yourself. What did you do before all this? What do you like?" She seemed startled by the question. "What I like?" "Yes, everyone likes something. What makes you happy?" Nara was quiet for a long moment, as if the question required deep thought. "I like growing things," she said finally. "Herbs and vegetables. I was the one who tended our clan's medicine garden. I like the way plants grow from nothing, the way you can nurture them and they become strong." She paused. "Is that foolish?" "No, it's not foolish at all. I like growing things too. That's why I have the garden." A small smile touched her lips, the first he had seen from her. It transformed her face, making her look younger and less burdened. "Then perhaps we are not so poorly matched." The days that followed established a rhythm. Dalton woke at dawn and did his morning chores, feeding the animals, collecting eggs from his small chicken coop, checking the crops. Nara rose with him and quietly joined in the work. She learned quickly, adapting to his routines with minimal instruction. They took meals together, gradually learning to navigate conversation. At first, their talks were practical discussions of chores and weather and what needed doing around the farm. But slowly, carefully, they began to share more. Dalton told her about his time as a soldier, about the things he had seen that made him want to leave that life behind. Nara spoke haltingly about her childhood, about growing up in an orc clan where strength was everything, and she was considered weak. "I could never be what they wanted me to be," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I am not fierce. I do not love battle. I wanted to heal things, not break them." "That's not weakness," Dalton said. "That's just being different, being yourself." Nara looked at him. "Your people do not see it that way. To humans, all orcs are monsters. Not all humans think that way. Most do." He could not argue with that. "You're right. But maybe minds can change, one person at a time." She smiled sadly. "You are an optimist, maybe, or maybe I'm just stubborn." Despite the growing ease between them, there was still a careful distance. They were polite, considerate, but they moved around each other like strangers sharing a space rather than a married couple. Dalton slept in his bed. Nara slept on a pallet she had made on the floor. He offered her the bed multiple times, but she refused. "It is your home," she said. "I am the one who has intruded. You're my wife. You didn't intrude, you were invited." But she would not budge on the matter, and Dalton did not push. He understood she needed to maintain some sense of control over her situation. And this was one way she could do that. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Dalton had to make a trip into town to sell his surplus vegetables and buy supplies. He went alone, as they had agreed. It was too risky to let anyone know about Nara. She stayed at the farm, hidden away, and Dalton tried not to think about how much like a prisoner that made her. The trip to town took half a day by wagon. Dalton sold his produce at the market, endured the usual suspicious looks from the other settlers who remembered his soft stance on orcs, and bought flour, sugar, salt, and other necessities. He was loading the supplies into his wagon when a voice called out behind him. "Hawthorne, wait up." Dalton turned to see Marcus Flynn, one of the other frontier farmers, approaching with his usual jovial expression. Marcus was a big man with a red beard and friendly eyes, one of the few people in the area who treated Dalton with genuine warmth. "Flynn," Dalton greeted him. "How's your harvest coming?" "Well enough. corn's looking good this year. Marcus leaned against the wagon. Say, I wanted to invite you to the Harvest Festival next month. Everyone's going to be there. Music, dancing, food. It'd be good to see you there. Dalton hesitated. He rarely attended social gatherings. I'll think about it. You always say that and never come, Marcus said with a laugh. Come on, Hawthorne. You can't hide out on that farm forever. You're still young. You should find yourself a wife, settle down proper. The irony of that statement almost made Dalton laugh. Maybe someday. Well, when you do, make sure she's a good human woman. None of those. Marcus lowered his voice and looked around. Green skins. Heard there's been orc sightings in the area. Raiders, probably. You're pretty far out. You be careful. Dalton's blood ran cold. Orc sightings. Where? Near the Thornwood. Old Patterson said he saw tracks, big ones. Probably a war party looking for trouble. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Just watch yourself, all right, and think about that festival. Dalton managed to nod and finish loading his wagon, but his mind was racing. If there were orcs in the area, it could mean trouble. If they found Nara, if they were from her former clan, they might try to take her back. Or worse. He drove the wagon home faster than was probably safe, his anxiety mounting with each mile. When he finally pulled into his yard and saw Nara emerge from the cabin, safe and whole, the relief was overwhelming. What's wrong? She asked immediately, reading his expression. What happened? He climbed down from the wagon and began unloading supplies. There are reports of orcs near the Thornwood. Do you think it could be your clan? Nara's face went pale, her skin turning a sickly shade of gray-green. It is possible. Throck would not give up so easily. He considers me his property. You're not property. You're a person, and you're under my protection now. She helped him carry supplies inside, but her movements were jerky with tension. You cannot fight them, Dalton. If they come in force, you will be killed. Then we'll hide you. Where would I hide? If they come here, they will search everything. They will know I am here. Nara set down a sack of flour and turned to face him. Perhaps I should go, find somewhere else. I have put you in danger. No. The word came out sharper than Dalton intended. You're not leaving. We'll figure something out. Why? Nara asked, her voice rising. Why do you care so much? You owe me nothing. I am just a burden you accepted out of kindness. Let me go before you are hurt because of me. Dalton set down the supplies he was carrying and looked at her directly. You're not a burden, Nara. These past weeks, having you here, it's been good, better than I expected. This place feels less empty. You make it feel like a home instead of just a house. She stared at him. You mean that? Yes. Nara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I do not understand you. I am your enemy. My people killed your friends during the war. We are supposed to hate each other. I don't hate you, Dalton said quietly. I never could. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither could quite name. Then Nara turned away, wiping at her eyes. I will keep watch. If they come, perhaps we will have warning enough to prepare. That night, Dalton barely slept. He lay in bed listening to every sound, his bow within reach. Across the room he could hear Nara's breathing, equally wakeful. He wondered what she was thinking, whether she was regretting coming here, regretting tying herself to a human. The next day passed in tense normalcy. They worked the farm, did their chores, but both kept glancing toward the tree line, watching for movement. When evening fell with no sign of intruders, some of the tension eased. Perhaps it was just scouts, Nara said as they prepared supper. Perhaps they have moved on. Maybe, Dalton agreed, though he was not convinced. They were eating when the first arrow struck the cabin wall. Dalton reacted instantly, throwing himself across the table and pulling Nara down as more arrows thudded into the walls. He could hear shouts outside, harsh voices in the orcish language. Stay down, he commanded. then scrambled for his bow. He risked a glance out the window and saw shapes moving in the twilight, at least 6 orcs armed with bows and axes spreading out around the cabin. "Nara," one of them roared. "Come out! You have shamed Throck Bonecrusher, you will answer for it." Beside him, Nara had gone rigid with terror. "It's him, he found me." Dalton knocked an arrow and aimed out the window. "I won't let him take you. You cannot fight them all, you will die. Maybe, but I won't go down easy." He released an arrow, aiming for one of the shapes. There was a cry of pain and the figure stumbled back. The other orcs roared in fury and rushed the cabin. Dalton shot twice more before they reached the door. The heavy oak shuddered under the impact of their axes. He knew it would not hold long. "The root cellar," he said urgently. "Behind the kitchen. Hide there." "No. I will not hide while you fight for me." "Nara, please." The door splintered. An orc warrior filled the opening, massive and battle-scarred. His eyes fell on Nara and his tusked mouth split in a cruel grin. "There you are, female. Time to come home." "She's not going anywhere," Dalton said, stepping between them with his bow drawn. The orc laughed. "A human? You left me for a weak human." He swung his axe casually. "I will kill him quickly, Nara, and then we will discuss your punishment." Dalton released his arrow. It caught the orc in the shoulder, driving deep. The warrior bellowed in rage but did not fall. He charged forward, and Dalton barely managed to drop his bow and draw his hunting knife in time. They collided with brutal force. The orc was stronger, but Dalton was faster. He dodged the axe swing and drove his knife into the orc's side. The warrior backhanded him, and Dalton flew across the room, smashing into the table. His vision blurred with pain. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard Nara scream. She had picked up a cast iron pot and swung it with all her strength at the wounded orc's head. The impact dropped him like a stone. 2 more orcs crashed through the door. Nara stood over Dalton, the pot raised like a weapon, her eyes blazing with a fury he had never seen from her. "Stay back," she shouted in Orcish. "He is my husband. You will not touch him." The orcs hesitated, surprised. Then a third figure entered, and Dalton knew instantly this was Throck. He was larger than the others, his green skin decorated with ritual scars. His small tusks had been filed to sharp points. When he looked at Nara, it was with a possessive hatred that made Dalton's stomach turn. "Your husband," Throck said in heavily accented human language. "You are mine, Nara. Your refusal means nothing. You will come back and accept your place." "No." Nara's voice shook but held firm. "I am married to Dalton Hawthorne. By Orcish rights, witnessed by my mother, the bond is legal." Throck's face darkened. "A marriage to a human is no marriage. It is blasphemy, a betrayal of your blood." "Then I am a betrayer," Nara said. "I would rather be that than your wife." Throck moved forward with frightening speed. He grabbed Nara's wrist and twisted, making her drop the pot. She cried out in pain, and something primal surged in Dalton. Despite his injuries, he launched himself at the orc, driving his shoulder into Throck's midsection. They went down together in a tangle of limbs. Throck was stronger, but Dalton fought with desperate fury. He managed to land several solid punches before Throck threw him off and rose to his feet. "Enough," Throck snarled. "I will kill you, human, and then Nara will watch what happens to those who defy orc law." He raised his axe for a killing blow. Dalton tried to roll away but knew he would not make it. He closed his eyes, waiting for the impact. It never came. Instead, there was a wet, choking sound. Dalton opened his eyes to see Throck staring down at his chest where the point of a sword protruded. Behind him stood Nara, holding Dalton's old military blade that had been hanging on the wall. Her face was set in grim determination. "No one hurts my husband," she said quietly. Throck collapsed. The other orcs stared in shock at their fallen leader. In that moment of confusion, Dalton grabbed his bow and nocked an arrow. "Leave," he said in a voice that promised violence. "Take your dead and go. Tell your clan that Nara is under my protection now. Any who come for her will die." The orcs looked at each other, then at their dead chieftain, then at Nara standing with bloodied sword. One of them nodded slowly. "The human has fire," he said in Orcish, then switched to broken common speech. "We go, but this is not forgotten. You have made enemies." "I've had enemies before," Dalton replied. "I'm still here." The orcs gathered their dead and wounded and melted back into the darkness. Only when they were truly gone did Dalton allow himself to collapse. Nara dropped the sword and rushed to him. "You're hurt," she said, her hands moving over him, checking for injuries. "Ribs broken, maybe. Cuts. We need to clean them." "You saved my life," Dalton managed. "You saved mine first." She helped him to a chair and began tending his wounds with gentle efficiency. As she worked, he saw her hands trembling. "I killed him," she whispered. "I killed Throck. I am a murderer." "You're a defender," Dalton said firmly. "You protected your home and your husband. That's not murder, that's survival." She met his eyes, and he saw the tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I was so afraid they would kill you. I could not let that happen. I could not lose." She stopped, as if afraid to finish the thought. "Lose what?" Dalton prompted gently. "You," she said softly. "I could not lose you. These weeks we have been together, you have been kinder to me than anyone in my life. You have made me feel safe, feel valued." She took a shuddering breath. "I think I am falling in love with you, and I do not know what to do with that." Dalton's heart hammered in his chest. "Nara, I know you did not want this," she continued quickly. "I know you married me out of kindness, not affection. I do not expect you to feel the same, but I needed you to know. I needed you to understand why I fought for you." For a moment, Dalton could only stare at her. Then, ignoring the pain in his ribs, he reached out and gently cupped her face with his hand. She froze, her eyes wide. "You beautiful, brave woman," he said. "Don't you know, I've been falling for you too, every day a little more. The way you hum while you work in the garden. The way you laugh at my terrible jokes. The way you look in the morning light when you think I'm not watching. I didn't expect this either, but I'm not sorry for it. Truly." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Truly." Then she was kissing him, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. It was her first kiss, he realized, and he tried to make it gentle, sweet, perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Nara said, testing the words. "I love you, Dalton Hawthorne." "I love you too," he replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. They held each other in the damaged cabin, surrounded by the evidence of the night's violence, but in that moment, none of it mattered. They had found something neither had expected: a true connection, a real partnership, a love that transcended the hatred of their peoples. The healing took time. Dalton's ribs needed weeks to mend properly, and Nara tended him with devoted care. During his recovery, they talked more deeply than ever before. They shared their fears and hopes and dreams. They learned each other's stories, all the small details that made a person real. Dalton told her about growing up as an orphan, raised by the military, never quite having a place to call home. Nara told him about being the youngest child in a warrior family, always different, always disappointing the expectations placed on her. They found kinship in their shared sense of not belonging. "Perhaps that is why we fit," Nara said one afternoon as they sat together on the porch. "We are both outcasts. We understand what it is to live on the edges." "Maybe," Dalton agreed, "or maybe we just understand each other." As summer faded into autumn, their relationship deepened. The careful distance disappeared. Nara moved from her pallet to sharing Dalton's bed, and they became husband and wife in truth. Their intimacy was tender and exploratory, two people learning each other with patience and care. The farm prospered. Nara's skill with plants transformed the garden into something truly impressive. She planted herbs and medicinal flowers, creating a small pharmacy of natural remedies. When Dalton cut his hand on a scythe, she made a poultice that prevented infection and sped healing. Her knowledge was extensive, and he realized she was a healer by nature, even if her clan had never valued that skill. "You could do so much good," he told her one day, "if people knew about your abilities." "People would never accept healing from an orc," she said sadly. "They would rather die than let me touch them." "Not everyone. There are good people out there, Nara, people who would see past your skin color to your skills." She smiled but did not argue. She had lived with prejudice her whole life. One kind human did not erase that history. But fate had a way of testing convictions. It was mid-autumn when Marcus Flynn arrived at the farm unannounced. Dalton saw the wagon approaching and immediately went into alert mode. He found Nara in the garden and quickly sent her to hide in the root cellar. She went reluctantly, understanding the necessity but hating it. Dalton met Marcus in the yard, trying to look casual. "Flynn, this is a surprise." Marcus climbed down from his wagon, and Dalton immediately saw something was wrong. The big man's face was gray with worry. "Hawthorne, I need help," Marcus said without preamble. "It's my daughter, Emily. She's sick. Real sick. Fever, can't keep food down. The town doctor doesn't know what's wrong with her. She's getting worse." His voice broke. "I don't know what to do." "You were the only person I could think of out this way. Do you have any medicine?" "Anything?" Dalton's mind raced. He had basic supplies, but nothing that would help with a serious illness. But Nara would know. Nara would have something. The question was whether he could convince her to help without revealing herself. "Let me check what I have," Dalton said. "Wait here." He went into the cabin and down to the root cellar. Nara was there in the darkness, and he quickly explained the situation. "A child is sick." Nara asked immediately. "What are her symptoms?" Dalton relayed what Marcus had said. Nara thought for a moment, then moved to the shelves where she kept her dried herbs. "It sounds like spotted fever, very dangerous for children, but I can make something that will help." She began gathering ingredients. "I will prepare it now." "Nara, if he sees you, then he sees me," she said firmly. "I will not let a child die because I am afraid. A healer's duty comes before safety." Dalton felt his love for her surge even stronger. "You're incredible." "I am practical," she corrected, but she smiled. She worked quickly, grinding herbs and mixing them with practiced precision. When she was done, she had a small pouch of medicine and a larger container of tea. "The tea will bring down the fever." The powder should be mixed with honey and given 3 times a day. She should improve within 2 days. If not, the illness is something else. Nara handed the remedies to Dalton. "Tell your friend to keep her cool and give her plenty of water." Dalton took the medicines but did not move toward the stairs. "Come with me. You should give these to him yourself." "Dalton, you're a healer, Nara. You deserve credit for your work. And maybe, just maybe, this is how we start changing minds. One person at a time, like I said before." She looked terrified, but after a moment she nodded. Together they climbed the stairs and walked out of the cabin. Marcus was pacing by his wagon. When he saw Nara emerge behind Dalton, he stopped dead. His hand went to the knife at his belt. "What, that's an orc, Hawthorne. Get away from it." "Her name is Nara," Dalton said calmly. "She's my wife, and she's the one who can help your daughter." Marcus stared, his face cycling through shock, anger, and confusion. "Your wife? You married a green skin." "Have you lost your mind?" "Probably," Dalton admitted, "but she's also a skilled healer. She has medicine that can help Emily. You can take it and leave, or you can refuse and watch your daughter die. Your choice." The brutal honesty of the statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked at Nara with barely concealed revulsion, then at the medicines in her hands, then back at Dalton. How do I know it's not poison? How do I know she's not trying to kill my little girl? Nara stepped forward and Marcus flinched, but she held out the medicines with steady hands. I have no reason to harm your daughter, she said in clear, accented common speech. I am a healer. It is my purpose to preserve life, not end it. Take these to her. Follow the instructions. She will recover. She paused, then added softly, I know what it is to be a daughter in danger. I would not wish that on anyone. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the medicines. If she dies, she will not die, Nara said with quiet confidence. I stake my honor on it. Marcus looked between them one more time, then climbed into his wagon and snapped the reins. As he drove away, Dalton could see him examining the medicines, his face troubled. That may have been a mistake, Nara said quietly. He will tell others. Soon everyone will know. I know. But it was the right thing to do. Dalton took her hand. We'll face whatever comes, together. 3 days later, Marcus returned. This time he arrived with his wife and young daughter. Emily was a girl of about 10 with her father's red hair and a shy smile. She looked pale but was clearly on the mend. Dalton and Nara met them in the yard. Nara seemed ready to bolt, but Dalton squeezed her hand and she stayed. Marcus climbed down from the wagon, then helped his wife and daughter down. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus did something completely unexpected. He bowed. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Emily was dying. The medicine you gave us saved her life. I was wrong about you. I am sorry. His wife, a small woman with kind eyes, stepped forward and did the same. Thank you for saving my baby. I am in your debt. Nara looked stunned. You do not need to bow. I only did what any healer would do. No, Marcus said, straightening. You did what a good person would do. Orc or human doesn't matter. You saved my daughter's life. He glanced at Dalton. I told folks in town what happened. Most didn't believe me. Some were angry. But a few said if you ever needed help, they'd be willing. That's dangerous for you, Dalton said. Admitting you support us. Maybe, but it's the truth. And I'm done lying about what's right. Marcus held out his hand. You're a good man, Hawthorne, and you've got yourself a good woman. I'd be honored to call you both friends. Dalton shook his hand, feeling emotion swell in his chest. Thank you, Marcus. That means more than you know. Little Emily, who had been hiding behind her mother, suddenly ran forward and threw her arms around Nara's waist. Thank you for making me better, she said. You're nice. I like you. Nara stood frozen for a moment, then slowly, carefully, hugged the little girl back. When Emily pulled away and ran back to her parents, there were tears streaming down Nara's face. What's wrong? Emily asked, worried. Nothing is wrong, Nara said, wiping her eyes. These are happy tears. Thank you for your kindness, little one. You have given me a great gift today. The Flynn family stayed for lunch. It was awkward at first, but gradually the conversation flowed more naturally. Marcus's wife, whose name was Anne, was fascinated by Nara's knowledge of herbs. Emily chattered happily about her pet rabbit and asked Nara if orcs had pets too. By the time they left, something had shifted. A bridge had been built. You think others will come? Nara asked that evening as they sat together watching the sun set. Maybe some will, others never will, but it's a start. And slowly, gradually, others did come. Not many, not a flood. But a trickle of people who had heard about the orc woman who healed Marcus Flynn's daughter. They came tentatively, often at night when no one would see them. They came with sick children, infected wounds, difficult births, and Nara helped them all. With each person she healed, the attitude shifted a little more. Some still cursed her and threw stones when she appeared in town. But others nodded in greeting or left gifts at the farm, a sack of grain, a basket of apples, a length of cloth. Small gestures that said they saw her not as a monster, but as a person. As winter approached, Dalton and Nara settled into a rhythm of life that felt real and lasting. They worked the farm together, preparing for the cold months ahead. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking, reading, simply being together. They made love with growing passion and tenderness, learning each other's bodies as thoroughly as they had learned each other's hearts. One night, as they lay tangled together under quilts, Nara spoke into the darkness. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said. "When my mother brought me to your door, I thought my life was over. I thought I was being traded like property, but you gave me something I never expected." "What's that?" "A home. A real home. A place where I am valued for who I am, not what others want me to be." She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You gave me love, real love, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it." "You already deserve it," Dalton said, kissing her forehead. "You're the strongest, kindest, most incredible person I've ever met. I'm the lucky one." She smiled and nestled closer. "We are both lucky. We found each other in the strangest way, but we found each other. That is what matters." The first snow came in late autumn, blanketing the farm in white. Dalton and Nara woke to a transformed world, pristine and beautiful. They spent the day doing winter chores, then sat together on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the snow fall. "I received a message," Nara said quietly. "From my mother." Dalton straightened. "She's all right." "Yes." "She reached the Northern Territory safely. She has found a place with a clan that accepted her." Nara pulled a small piece of birch bark from her pocket, covered in orcish script. "She asked about us, if we are well, if I am happy." "What did you tell her?" "I sent back that we are more than well, that I am happier than I ever thought possible, that you are everything she hoped you would be and more." Nara looked at him. "She wants to visit in the spring if it is safe." "Of course it's safe. She's family. She's always welcome here." Nara's eyes shone. "Family, yes, that is what we are now, a family." The word resonated with Dalton. All his life he had been alone. No parents, no siblings, no one who truly belonged to him. But now he had Nara, and through her he would have Grenda. A strange, unlikely family, but a real one. "I want that," he said. "I want to build a family with you, a life, a future." "So do I," Nara said, "more than anything." Winter passed in quiet contentment. They ventured to town only when necessary, and even then the reception was mixed. Some people had softened toward them, others remained hostile, but they faced it together, and that made it bearable. In late winter, a traveling merchant came to the farm. He was an old man who dealt in rare books and curiosities. When he saw Nara, he did not flinch or curse. Instead, he studied her with interest. "You are far from your people," he observed. "I have found new people," Nara replied carefully. The merchant smiled. "I see that. Good for you. Love is rare enough in this world. Cherish it when you find it, regardless of what form it takes." He produced a small wooden box from his wagon. "I have something you might appreciate, a gift for your kindness." Inside the box was a set of delicate glass vials, perfect for storing medicines and tinctures. Nara gasped at their beauty. "I cannot accept this," she said. "It is too much." "Nonsense. Every healer needs proper tools. Consider it an investment in the health of this region. You never know when I might need your services myself." The merchant tipped his hat. "Peace be with you both." He left before they could protest further. Nara held the vials like precious treasures, and Dalton saw tears in her eyes again. "People can be good," she whispered. "Even when everything else is terrible, some people can be so very good." "Yes," Dalton agreed. "They can." Spring arrived with a rush of green growth and warm breezes. The farm burst to life, and they threw themselves into planting season. Nara's garden expanded dramatically, filled with both food crops and medicinal herbs. She worked with quiet joy, clearly in her element. One morning in early spring, a familiar figure appeared on the road. Grenda Ironback walked up to the farm with steady strides, looking older but healthy. When she saw Nara, her stern face cracked into a broad smile. "My daughter," she said. "Mother." Nara ran to her, and they embraced fiercely, speaking rapidly in Orcish. Dalton watched with a smile, giving them their moment. Finally, Grenda pulled back and turned to Dalton. "You have kept your word. She looks well, happy." "She is," Dalton said. "We both are." Grenda studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I see it in your eyes. You love her." "Truly love her, not just care for her out of duty." "I do, more than I can express." "Good, then my gamble was the right one." Grenda looked around the farm. "You have built something here, something that should not exist but does, a bridge between our peoples." "One bridge," Dalton said. "It's not much, but it's a start." "All great journeys begin with a single step," Grenda replied, "or in this case, a single bridge." Grenda stayed with them for 2 weeks, and it was a time of unexpected joy. The orc woman helped with farm work, told stories of the northern clans, and cooked traditional orc dishes that were surprisingly delicious. In the evenings, they sat together and talked about everything: the past, the present, the future. "Have you thought about children?" Grenda asked one night, her question characteristically direct. Nara flushed dark green. "Mother, it is a reasonable question. You are married. It is natural to wonder about the next generation." Dalton and Nara exchanged glances. They had discussed it privately, wondering if human and orc could even have children together. There were stories of such things, but they were rare and often ended badly. "We have talked about it," Dalton said carefully, "but we're not sure if it's possible or wise." "If it happens, Grenda said. "The gods will decide, but I think any child of yours would be special, strong and kind like both of you." After Grenda left, returning to her new clan in the north, the farm felt quieter, but it was not an empty quiet. It was the quiet of contentment, of lives well lived. As spring turned to summer, Marcus Flynn became a regular visitor, often bringing his family. Little Emily was completely recovered and had become attached to Nara, following her around the garden and asking endless questions about plants. Other families began to visit too, cautiously at first, then with growing frequency. Nara became known in the region as a skilled healer. People still called her the Orc Woman, but the tone had shifted from disgust to respect, at least among those who knew her. She never went into town without Dalton. It was still too dangerous, but people came to the farm, and that was enough. One hot summer day, Dalton was working in the fields when he saw Nara running toward him. His first thought was danger, but then he saw her face. She was not frightened. She was radiant. "Dalton," she called. "Dalton, I need to tell you something." He dropped his hoe and jogged to meet her. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right." She grabbed his hands, her face glowing. "I am with child. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Dalton could not process the words. Then they hit him all at once, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared birds from trees a mile away. He picked Nara up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "A baby," he said when he finally set her down. "We're having a baby." "Yes, I am only 2 months along, but I am certain." She placed his hand on her stomach. "Our child, part human, part orc, a true bridge between our peoples." Dalton felt tears prick his eyes. "I love you so much. I love you too, so very much." They held each other in the summer sunshine. Two people from impossible circumstances who had found the most possible thing: love, commitment, and now a future that would extend beyond themselves. The pregnancy progressed well. though Nara was careful to monitor her own health with a healer's precision. She prepared tonics for herself, made plans for the birth, and generally approached impending motherhood with the same practical determination she brought to everything. Dalton fussed over her constantly, trying to keep her from overworking. She tolerated it with good humor, even when it drove her crazy. "I am pregnant, not dying," she reminded him for the 100th time when he tried to take a basket of vegetables from her. "I know. I just want to make sure you're safe, both of you." She softened at that and kissed his cheek. "We are safe, we have you." As autumn arrived again, a year and a half after Grenda had first knocked on Dalton's door, preparations began in earnest. Anne Flynn, who had become something of a friend to Nara, helped prepare the cabin for a birth. She brought baby clothes and offered to be present as a midwife. "I have delivered many babies," she assured them. "Human babies, anyway, but the principle should be the same." "I hope so," Nara said, placing a hand on her very large belly. "This child is strong, very active." "That's good," Anne said with a smile. "Active babies are healthy babies." The birth came on a cold night in late autumn. Dalton paced outside while Anne and Nara worked inside the cabin. He heard cries of pain and wanted desperately to be in there, but Anne had firmly kicked him out. "This is women's work," she had said. "You'll only be in the way." So he paced and prayed and tried not to imagine all the things that could go wrong. Human and orc bodies were different. The child might not survive. Nara might not survive. He could lose everything he had come to love in one terrible night. Then, after what felt like hours but was probably less, he heard a new sound. A baby's cry, strong and healthy. The door opened and Anne emerged, tired but smiling. "Congratulations, Dalton. You have a son, and your wife is well." Relief and joy crashed over him in equal measure. "Can I see them?" "Of course. Go meet your family." Dalton entered the cabin to find Nara propped up in bed, looking exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a small bundle, and when she pulled back the blanket, Dalton saw his son for the first time. The baby was beautiful. His skin was a soft shade somewhere between human peach and orc green, a perfect blend of both parents. He had tiny pointed ears and the barest suggestion of tusks. His eyes, when they opened, were dark and bright with new life. "He's perfect," Dalton whispered, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "He's absolutely perfect." "He is ours," Nara said, tears streaming down her face. "Our son, our bridge between worlds." Dalton gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The infant gripped his finger with surprising strength, and Dalton felt his heart crack open with a love he had never imagined possible. "What should we name him?" he asked. Nara thought for a moment. "In orcish tradition, children are named for qualities we hope they will embody. I would like to name him something that represents what he is: a uniter, a maker of peace." "Dale," Dalton said suddenly. "It means valley in the old tongue, a place where different rivers meet and become one." "Dale," Nara repeated, testing the name. She looked down at her son. "Dale Hawthorne. Yes, that is his name, our little peacemaker." The baby, as if approving, made a small cooing sound and settled into sleep. Word of the birth spread quickly through the region. Some people were horrified that a half-breed had been born. Others were curious. A few were genuinely happy for the couple. Marcus Flynn arrived the next day with a handmade cradle. "For the little one," he said gruffly, "may he grow strong and healthy." Other gifts followed, blankets from Anne. A toy carved by the traveling merchant who happened to be passing through. Even some of the more accepting townspeople sent small tokens: a bag of oats, a jar of preserves, a set of tiny clothes. Not everyone was kind. There were threats and angry letters. Someone left a dead rat on their doorstep with a note that said, "Monster baby." Dalton burned the note and buried the rat, then held his son a little tighter. "We will protect you," he whispered to Dale. "We will teach you to be strong and kind. And we will show the world that love can cross any divide." As winter settled in, the small family hunkered down together. Dalton had never been happier. Yes, there were challenges. Yes, they faced prejudice and hatred. But inside their small cabin, they had built something pure and good. Nara was a devoted mother, attentive but not smothering. Dale grew quickly, proving to be a healthy, happy baby. He had his mother's eyes and his father's smile. When he laughed, which was often, it filled the cabin with joy. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, Dale asleep in his cradle, Nara leaning against Dalton's shoulder, Nara spoke softly. "Do you ever regret it, saying yes that night when my mother came?" Dalton considered the question seriously. "No, not even for a moment. That night changed my life, but it changed it for the better. I was lonely before, going through the motions. Now I have a purpose. I have a family. I have you." "I feel the same," Nara said. "I thought my life was ending when I refused Throck, but it was only beginning. Everything that came before was just preparation for this. For us." "For us," Dalton agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son sleep, and Dalton marveled at the strange path that had brought them here. A desperate orc mother making an impossible request. A lonely human saying yes against all reason. And from that unlikely beginning, a love story that defied every expectation, spring came again, bringing renewal and growth. Dale grew into a toddler, strong and curious. He spoke words in both common and orcish, a true child of two worlds. When he played in the garden, following his mother and babbling questions, both Dalton and Nara felt their hearts overflow with love and pride. More families began to visit the farm openly, no longer afraid to be associated with the orc woman and her human husband. Nara's reputation as a healer had grown to the point where even the town doctor occasionally consulted with her on difficult cases. It was not full acceptance. There were still people who hated and feared them, but it was progress. One day in late spring, Grenda returned for another visit. When she saw her grandson for the first time, the fierce orc warrior actually wept. "He is beautiful," she said, holding Dale with surprising gentleness. "He is proof that our peoples need not be enemies, that we can build something new together." "One child cannot change centuries of hatred," Nara said, though she smiled. "No, but he is a start, and starts matter." Grenda looked at Dalton. "You have done more than protect my daughter. You have given her a life worth living. You have given her joy. That is a debt I can never repay." "There is no debt," Dalton said. "Nara has given me just as much. More, probably. We saved each other." As summer progressed, Dalton and Nara began to talk about the future. They wanted more children, perhaps. They wanted to expand the farm. They wanted to find ways to continue building bridges between humans and orcs, one person at a time. "We could offer apprenticeships," Nara suggested one evening. "Teach young people about healing, regardless of whether they are human or orc." "That's a wonderful idea," Dalton said. "Though finding people willing to learn from an orc might be challenging. We only need one at first. One brave soul willing to look past tradition and see truth." They did not have to wait long. 2 weeks later, a young human woman named Sarah arrived at the farm. She was perhaps 19, thin and nervous but determined. "I want to learn," she said simply. "I have heard you are the best healer in the region. I do not care that you are an orc. I care that you can teach me." Nara looked at Dalton, who smiled and nodded. She turned back to Sarah. "It will not be easy," Nara warned. "The work is hard and others will judge you for learning from me. I know, but I believe healing is more important than prejudice." "Then you are welcome here," Nara said. "We will teach you everything we know." Sarah became the first apprentice, but not the last. Over the following year, 3 more young people arrived seeking training. 2 were human. One was a young orc male who had heard stories of the orc woman living peacefully among humans and wanted to see if it was possible to bridge the divide. The farm became something of a sanctuary, a place where people of different backgrounds could come together around a common purpose. It was not always easy. There were arguments and misunderstandings, but gradually friendships formed. Walls came down. Understanding grew. On Dale's 2nd birthday, they held a celebration at the farm. Humans and orcs gathered together, not many, but enough. They shared food and stories and laughter. Children played together without caring about skin color or tusks. For one afternoon, the future felt possible. Dalton stood on his porch watching the gathering and felt Nara slip her arm through his. "Look what we built," she said softly. "From one desperate night to this, it seems impossible." "The best things usually are," Dalton replied. He looked down at her, this incredible woman who had changed his entire life. "I love you, Nara Hawthorne. Thank you for knocking on my door," she laughed. "I did not knock. My mother did." "Then thank you for standing behind her. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for building this life with me." "Thank you for saying yes," Nara replied. "Thank you for seeing past what I was supposed to be to who I actually am. Thank you for loving me." They kissed as their friends and family celebrated around them, as their son played with other children in the garden, as the sun set golden over the farm they had built together. It was not a perfect world. Prejudice still existed. Hatred still existed. But in their small corner of it, they had created something different, something better, a home built on love instead of hatred. A family forged from unlikely circumstances. A future that honored both their pasts while creating something entirely new. As darkness fell and guests began to leave, Dalton and Nara put Dale to bed together, then sat on their porch watching the stars emerge. "You think he will face hardship?" Nara asked, speaking of their son. "Because of what he is, probably," Dalton said honestly. "The world is not kind to those who are different, but we will raise him to be strong, to be proud of his heritage, both sides of it, to stand up for what is right, even when it is hard." "He will be a bridge," Nara said, "like his name suggests, a place where different worlds meet." "Yes. But more than that, he will be himself. That is all we can ask." Dalton pulled her close. "We will face whatever comes together, just like we always have." "Together," Nara agreed. "Always together." They sat in peaceful silence under the stars. 2 souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love that transcended the boundaries their world had tried to place between them. Their journey had begun with a desperate mother and an uncertain answer. But it had grown into something beautiful, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and the simple choice to see another person not as an enemy, but as someone worthy of love. The future would bring challenges. They knew that. But they would face them as they had faced everything else, hand in hand, heart to heart, building their impossible life one day at a time. And in doing so, they proved that even the deepest divides could be crossed, that even the oldest hatred could be overcome, that love truly could conquer all. Their story was not one of grand gestures or epic battles. It was a story of small choices made with brave hearts, of kindness offered when it was easiest to turn away, of trust built slowly through shared days and gentle words, of a love that grew not because it was destined or fated, but because 2 people chose each other again and again, day after day. And in the end, that was the greatest magic of all. As the years passed, their family grew. Another child came, a daughter they named Luna, who had more of her mother's orcish features but her father's gentle spirit. The farm prospered. The apprentice program expanded. Slowly, very slowly, attitudes in the region began to shift. It was not a revolution. It was evolution. Person by person, heart by heart, minds opened to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, orcs and humans did not have to be enemies. That mixed families could thrive. That love could exist between the most unlikely people. Dalton and Nara became something of local legends, the human and orc who defied everyone to build a life together. Some told their story as a warning. Others told it as inspiration. But everyone knew their names, knew their story, knew what they represented. When Dalton's hair began to gray, he often sat on his porch in the evening, watching his children play in the garden that Nara had spent years perfecting. He thought about the young soldier he had been, hardened by war and loneliness. He thought about the knock on the door that had changed everything. He thought about the scared young orc woman who had become his wife, his partner, his greatest love. "What are you thinking about?" Nara asked, settling beside him. She had aged too, her dark hair shot through with silver, but to Dalton she was as beautiful as ever. "About how lucky I am," he said simply. "About how one choice, one single yes gave me everything I never knew I needed." "You gave me everything too," Nara said. "A life, a family, a purpose. You gave me hope when I had none." "We gave each other those things," Dalton corrected. "That is what love does. It multiplies rather than divides." Their children ran to them then. Dale now a young man preparing to leave for the city where he would study medicine. Luna still a spirited girl with her mother's love of growing things. They sat together as a family, talking and laughing as the sun set over the farm. And Dalton Hawthorne, looking at his impossible, wonderful family, knew with absolute certainty that saying yes that night so many years ago had been the best decision of his life. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because it was right, because in the end, love was always right. It was the only thing that could heal old wounds, bridge impossible divides, and create futures where none should exist. And their love, human and orc, impossible and perfect, was proof that even the most broken world could be mended, one brave choice at a time.